Kia ora, welcome to this panel. Thank you to the Tahi Festival for holding this important discussion today and allowing us to come and discuss our experience of making the New Zealand Sign Language interpreted performance of Sorry for Your Loss. My name is Rachel Turner and I'm the Director of Interpretation for Sorry for Your Loss. Passing it on.
Hello everybody, my name is Laura, sign name Laura. I am the director of Sorry for Your Loss, and I was also a dramaturg for the piece, which means that I helped to craft and construct the story with Sian. Over to you, Sian.
Kia ora everyone, my name is Sian. My sign name is Sian. And I am the writer of Sorry for Your Loss, and I also perform in the solo piece. Over to you, Melissa.
Kia ora everybody, my name is Melissa and my sign name is Melissa. I'm actually a sign language interpreter related to this performance. I helped with the translation of the original script and then we polished it up with Rachel with the final translation. We are really excited to share our process for developing this performance. I've worked with Equal Voices for the last 5 years, and we've created a lot of original theatre works in English and New Zealand Sign Language for deaf and hearing audiences. I trained with a deaf sign theatre expert called Denise Armstrong in the UK, and I've been working closely with Laura for the last 5 years in Equal Voices. Sorry for Your Loss is not actually an Equal Voices project, it's separate, but Laura and Sian both also work with Equal Voices, so I know that access is very important to both of them. Laura and Sian both asked me to be involved in Sorry for Your Loss and to provide deaf leadership in this space. And I worked closely with Melissa, Sian and Laura to create an NZSL accessible version of this piece.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. So my name's Laura, as I said. I've worked with Equal Voices Arts for the past 10 years or so, if not longer. And in my work with Equal Voices, we create bilingual theatre original works in NZSL and spoken English, working with deaf and hearing performers to create work that's accessible for deaf and hearing audiences. So in the Equal Voices performances, there's no need for direct interpretation because we develop the deaf and hearing narratives that weave together, and that helps to create an overall accessible piece of theatre for both communities. So as Rachel said, this Sorry for Your Loss isn't an Equal Voices performance. It was developed with an amazing hearing writer and actor, Sian. But access is so important to me and Sian. And we'd always planned on developing an accessible version of Sorry for Your Loss. And we saw the opportunity to actually develop an interpreted version with a little bit of a twist. So we were really interested because it's a solo piece. What that would look like if the interpreter could actually be embedded on stage, so not in the corner, but actually on stage and incorporated in the action, with the aim being for better visual access for deaf audiences. And we wanted to work alongside Rachel because the key part of all of this is to ensure deaf leadership in the space. So yeah, that's how it all came about. Sorry for Your Loss, which we should be performing this evening in Tahi, but thanks to the alert levels, we were unable to join, but this is wonderful to be getting this opportunity to talk about our process. But yeah, as the piece is very physical and relies heavily on physical storytelling, we thought it would work really well to try some more kind of creative and accessible approaches with the NZSL interpreted version. Diane, do you want to talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, when I started writing Sorry for Your Loss, Laura and I worked really hard to develop many different ways to play different characters on stage, and I play about 4, I think, different characters in the play, as well as playing myself at a range of different ages. So the New Zealand Sign Language interpretation needed to be very clear, as did my physical storytelling, for it to work. And we had the pleasure of working with Melissa in the past, and she's so open to working collaboratively and supportively. So we asked her to join in this project as the hearing interpreter to work alongside Rachel. And selfishly, I'm used to performing this piece solo, so it was nice to have some more humans in the rehearsal space. Someone else to share the stage.
Oh, sorry, pin's the wrong person. Okay, yep, apologies. That was the interpreter. So previously, I have helped with translating scripts, but then my work was given to Rachel and Laura and Sian to discuss, and then Rachel was the director, and she did beautiful work, absolutely. And the first time with the interpretive theatre finished and the deaf consultation, and that was it. But now it's sort of having a live director, getting more information, giving me some more confidence in the interpretation that it can match the audience better as well. Also, before, when I was interpreting, it's been off to the side for the whole thing, and that was it. And now being able to match with the performer and with following the performer around the stage, it means that people don't have to be trying to keep an eye on the interpreter off to the side and then with the performer in the centre or over in other places. And it makes it just so much easier. And if people are wanting to do interpretive theatre, and it should be deaf-led, because the audience is the deaf community. If hearing people create the theatre production, then you need interpreters, yes, but you need deaf people involved for the full translation process and to be led properly. So previously, sorry, yep, just hold a second, please. Sorry. I mean, it's really good having deaf and hearing working together in a group and supporting each other. And we can sort of add different perspectives and choices and options. And we can look at the different language or types of things that can be used, when sign language can be added. And I can look at it from my deaf worldview and the opinion of deaf culture, and have a look at the interpretation and value, and also look at the communication values and things like that for the audience. And it's been really exciting being able to work with an interpreter and having the interpreter being able to shadow Sian and you know, means that my eyes aren't having to travel in 2 different spaces. So it's been really wonderful to be able to see that. And when we started with Melissa and translating the script, and we were looking and making sure and like having tips and looking at different things, and you know, it was really good. It did make it difficult for the spaces at times, because I mean, having a look at where Sian was trying to be on the stage and things, it added a lot. And with a deaf audience, having to look at how that would work too. We had to make sure that it was clear and that we could see what ages Sian was trying to show and make sure that the timing was right as well. Having the jokes, the movement, the speeches, the sign language and everything had to be good for the deaf and hearing audiences. It was really exciting to be able to play with the creativity of accessibility and be able to break down the interpretation and have the movement of, there were no rules to break, we could make it up as we go. And honestly, we want more opportunities for deaf people to be able to perform in things like Sorry for Your Loss, and that is our goal for the future.
Great. Yeah. So as Rachel said there, it was always a goal to have a deaf interpreter do this role as well. So we're hoping to have that opportunity in the future, thanks to the groundwork that's been laid by Rachel and Melissa. But yeah, so I'm used to working in 2 languages, so it's just a joy to see the accessible version develop, and most importantly for me as a director in this space was seeing deaf leadership. So we were, me and Rachel side by side. I'm working to direct Sian, Rachel's working to direct Melissa in this space. And as Rachel said, we work really closely together to make sure things like timing, visual access is working for both deaf and hearing audiences. Some of the jokes and some of the humor can land differently with each community depending on timing. So we take time to ensure that both can coexist and hopefully even strengthen each other. So that's something that we worked hard to do. Melissa, is there anything you want to add to that from your experience?
Sorry, Melissa, just having to...
Oh, sure.
Okay. So one example that I would like to talk about was with the phone. Do you remember the phone? That was so difficult. That needed a deaf director and someone who had experience with, because normally the interpreters use role shifting and that doesn't work for a phone call. And a deaf interpreter wouldn't know how to work that out either. A hearing interpreter can't either with a deaf person. I mean, the deaf person's looking and can see that we're working together as a team, and we worked that out. But the phone call was probably the most difficult part. That's my example anyway. And your experience, Sian, what was yours? Actually, the experience with the phone, finding that hard, the time, trying to match everything and just looking at things, it was amazing. It was a new experience for us, definitely.
I loved it. I loved watching it all play out, because at that point of the development for this version, I had done the show quite a lot. So for me, it brought a fresh new perspective where I could see things being reconstructed and I was able to support that. So I loved watching that happen, but it was very hard to work out the logistics of it. I also realized at the top of this live stream, I forgot to mention, if anyone's watching out there, that you can ask us questions in the comment section. So feel free to write in questions, and then at the end, I'll ask the team, and we're happy to answer any questions around the process or deaf leadership, or to direct you into, if you're interested in creating work like this, we're all ears. But also, well, I guess in being the hearing actor in the space, it was amazing to be able to open the show as I do as the actor, walking out talking directly to the audience, introducing them into the space. But I was also able to turn and acknowledge Melissa as the interpreter, welcome her on stage, explain that we were going to share the story together. And that's what it was. There was no hierarchy or priority placed for either of the languages used. We took a lot of time to prioritize sharing it. And so our dynamic on stage was spatially was to be aware, okay, if I'm going to deliver this part, where is Melissa to me, and how can I allow for that, the scope of the sign to reach all the audience members, as well as for me to do my job. It was great, and I'm sure many actors would love the opportunity to share that space where you know that you're supporting two different cultures and languages to be able to receive the story. It just felt like we're both standing there sharing the same story. It was really empowering. Yeah, and again, the timing, there were little alterations that we'd need to make. That was fine. And the delivery of the jokes, it was quite humbling. Sometimes I would do crack a joke, be real crack up, and there'd be silence. But about 3 seconds later, Melissa would really get the laughs. So that was great. That was cool. But no, it meant that we had kind of a double timing. So Melissa and I's timing worked together, but we also had to be responsive to the audience. So we would hit marks with some of the audience and then wait for the roll on and then get another wave of reaction, whether that's emotional or comedic. So again, it's really exciting space to be as a hearing actor, to be able to stand alongside as an ally in the space and have fun. Yeah. Rachel, do you have any advice maybe that you could give them?
Oh yeah. Okay. So my advice would be, how to make spaces more accessible. The thing is to plan the accessibility with the project at the start. You need to include the accessibility in the budget early. You need to look at the costs that are going to be involved, because there will be some costs. You need to visit the theatre and look at how you can have that relationship, how you can provide New Zealand Sign Language access, having a look at Arts Access Aotearoa, because they have funding that can help with things like getting accessible theatre. And it's just fairer for people. They've got, sorry, how much funding I missed? Sorry, the interpreter missed 1.7 million in funding that they need to, use. It can be hard to get in there, but it's worth a go.
Oh, sorry, I'll just leap in. I think there was a little miscommunication.
Sorry.
No, it's hard when it's glitchy, isn't it? Rich, were you saying about an article from Arts Access Aotearoa saying 1.7 million Kiwis find it hard to access?
Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I thought it was budget.
No,
That's my fault. So it's 1.7 million Kiwis find it hard to access. Yep. Find it hard to access theatre and arts.
I want to add something to that as well when we're looking at advice, and I'm seeing some of the questions come in, so we will answer this, and it talks to some of this advice. But something that's really important to identify, whether you're a festival organizer, you're a venue, you're an artist, if you're making a funding application, to prioritize creating access at the start. Sometimes it can be a bit of an afterthought. Not by any, if you're not used to this space, it can be make the show, oh, how can we get an access? And something that I relate it to is it's the same as if we were to add Te Reo Māori into a show. It would be important to get a Te Reo Māori advisor who is first language preferably, Te Reo Māori into the space. It's the same cultural context. So where possible to get deaf leadership or deaf consultancy who are first language, New Zealand Sign Language, is imperative to this process. So you bring them on early on. And again, I'll revisit your questions to get some specifics there, but it's just, I think we need to start to shift our thinking into thinking it's very similar to Te Reo Māori. If we have Te Reo Māori in, we get an advisor. If we have NZSL, it's so important to get a deaf advisor to come in because it only serves your project.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Deaf leadership in the space, absolutely vital. We're so lucky to work with Rachel on this piece. So lucky to work with Melissa and Sian, a beautiful team. But yeah, deaf leadership all the way. And as Rachel said there, with 1.7 million Kiwis struggling to access the arts, so what can we do to improve this statistic, this figure? Yeah, we just encourage anybody. We're wide open for questions, or if we can offer any support, or if anybody wants to get in touch. At the end of this Facebook Live, just if anyone needs contact details, please contact Tahi Festival. They'll send your contact details on. We would love to support more work in this space. We would love to do anything to create more access. Yeah. Does anyone else have anything to add before we go to questions?
I just want to say, I want to add a little bit. It's amazing to be working with this team because of the amount of respect that we have for each other. Everyone is equal, and we have so much connection, and it's been amazing to work, and being able to have the deaf leadership in here has been amazing. And for the future, I can see it working so well, and especially in theatre. I can see the growth that has been happening, and I think that I would love to hear more questions from people, but I just want to say that it has been an amazing experience.
I'll pick up that transition because we do have questions. Now, for those who are watching the live stream, how we will do the questions is I will ask the questions in English. They'll be translated by our lovely interpreter, and then we will kind of do the awkward look to each other on Zoom to see who is most appropriate to answer. Okay, so if you look, yeah, that's what we're doing, and then we'll add if anyone else wants to add to it. Great. So our first question that we received was for people who are wanting to make an accessible work with an interpreter but don't have any connections with the deaf community already, what would you recommend? Where do we start? It's a great question. Laura.
Just because I have an idea. So I would recommend speaking to the wonderful, wonderful team at Arts Access Aotearoa. They have connections with the deaf community. They know who's working in this field. They would be able to put you in contact with someone like Rachel, for example. There are more people doing this work as well. I know Kelly Bainsley's doing amazing work as well in this space. Yeah, Arts Access would be my first port of call. They're a wonderfully supportive team, so that would be where I would go first. Anything else to add, anyone?
Lily?
Oh, sorry, just a second. Okay. Just a little bit of a sidetrack, but I think it's important to remember if you want to have interpreted theatre, don't focus on the interpreter too much. Focus on the deaf community and have a conversation there. Having a deaf director and having an open mind about accessible theatre. Don't only think about having a hearing interpreter. It is important to have a budget for that, but having a deaf director is always a really good idea too.
Anyone else? Next question. Perfect. Okay, so next question we've got is accessibility is so important, but often feels so inaccessible financially. Are there funds to support makers to do this work properly?
We always have that problem, yeah.
So
Oh.
I,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it doesn't really answer the issue. Yes, funds are always a major problem. We find that planning early on in our process really helps. So we package up accessibility as part of the funding application, as opposed to doing it afterwards. Which I know it doesn't mean that it's always an easy thing to get, but at least yeah, we find that it's easier to do it that way. So that's one idea. Another idea is often you can speak to the theatres that you're hoping to work with, because sometimes they have support available to help with access. Melissa, did you want to add something to that, or were you just?
Yep. That's a good idea. For example, here in Wellington, we have a theatre, and the theatre themselves have their own accessibility budget. So the people making the show just apply for funding, and then that pays for me. And so that's also a possibility in some places.
I'll add something as well. It's the hardest thing, and it's hard to make a show to start off with, you know, if you're not successful with funding applications, and then on top of that to create another version of it. But again, having the conversation with who you're presenting with, whether it is a venue, if it's a festival, you can have that collaborative conversation. I assume that you'd be able to get sponsorship as well, where you can go and contact businesses or other arts organizations or organizations themselves and work alongside them to try and work out a way. Purely, I mean, your priority there is to create access and to, if possible, wherever possible, to create employment for deaf directors, consultants, interpreters, you know, all of it. So it's a win-win for a lot of people. I think it's awkward, but having the conversation and trying to look beyond initial funding applications and hope that that is successful.
So hearing people, please don't be scared about asking us. It's wonderful to work together, quite honestly. When someone asks me to work in a team, I'm so appreciative, and I want to show you how we can be successful together. And it's a really good experience for you as well. And so please don't be nervous. We will be happy to work together, quite honestly. So yeah, just letting you know.
Awesome. Next question. Cool. How do theatre makers / festivals choose what shows might be the most accessible for deaf audiences? That's a great question. Millie's in there.
Okay. Ask the deaf community what they want. The festivals will decide no, but I mean, really, you need to ask the deaf.
I think yeah, just adding to that, we do lots of consultation with the deaf community around lots of our decisions with Equal Voices as a theatre company, but also any other accessible work we're doing. Go straight to the deaf community, consult the deaf community. They're the experts.
Absolutely.
They're also your audience. And I think sometimes that gets lost. Some conversations I've had with people who are in positions of programming or festivals or people in those positions that I've talked with about our work tends to come to around audience engagement and numbers and what's going to get the biggest audience. But again, you've got to look at engagement. And that starts with the conversation of what do they want to see, you know, and then you build that relationship. So if you're in that position of a programmer for a festival or a venue, or you're kind of at that level where you are deciding you're making these decisions, have a conversation and start to build networks with the deaf community, because you'll start to hear you know, what they want to see, and then you can build that audience engagement. But often the conversations I've had with some people it sound like, well, no one shows up, so why? So starting that conversation at the right place could help. Suggestion.
Sometimes hearing people forget about the deaf people, the language and things, and they carry on, and it's like, no, we are very visual, and deaf and hearing people can appreciate New Zealand Sign Language when it's being performed.
Next question. What would your, let me check that's the right one. Yep. What would your ultimate theatre show, what would be, okay, I can't even speak English. What would be your ultimate theatre show you want to create?
Oh.
Like,
Oh, something with huge language, you know, something with so many hands, just open and language everywhere, and something for deaf and hearing, but really accessible. Yeah.
yeah, I guess we're lucky. We just made a piece that we're super proud of. The new Equal Voices piece called Where Our Shadows Meet. A great deaf hearing team, original piece incorporating sign language, dance, physical theatre, sign language, infusing, inspiring into the choreography of the movement of the piece. Yeah, we made it. We can't wait. We're just hoping to get it out there when the situation is safe and allows us to do so. But we had the most fun making this piece. It's about communication issues and about family and about love and loss. But it's a very visually engaging piece, and yeah, we're playing with that weaving together of deaf and hearing narratives. So that kind of also respects the two different cultural experiences of those two communities, which I think is a really exciting place to play when you know, my job is looking at a story and staging people's stories. You know, I want to see deaf actors on stage sharing their stories in their first language.
Talking about the ideal theatre production, I feel like Equal Voices, something like that, because you don't need an interpreter for deaf. If you've got both deaf and hearing, then they benefit, and the audience will be able to benefit from that too, and they'll be able to see their own story in it. So yeah, I haven't been in a Equal Voices project, but my dream is something like that, quite honestly. Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful. It's just beautiful. My favorite part going back about theatre is the time going backwards, and the audience are just amazed. It's the ideas, you know, you can't sign backwards, but you know, you can, you know, and it's just amazing and so visual, and understanding the time going backwards and forwards, and showing those little times where we go back and forwards in time, and it's just amazing.
I know what scene Rachel's talking about there. She's looking from a scene from one of the Equal Voices pieces, Salonica. It was amazing, actually, because this is another example that Rachel's sharing about just how amazing sign language is for the stage. In the scene that Rachel was describing, a scene goes backwards and shows everything in beautiful visual detail, and it's just something that you can't write in words. It's a very embodied physical language, and to see it in its
iconic
mastery in the hands of a first language user is always something that's absolutely beautiful. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited by anything that's inclusive, that it welcomes everybody into the theatre to experience something together, particularly in a time when we're all kept apart and a separate. I'm really craving that connection. So pieces that bring people together, particularly different, diverse members of our community, that's exciting for me. So yeah, anything.
All right, I'm jumping in. We're running out of time, but we've only got 2 more questions left. So we'll head into the next question. In Aotearoa, we are also working towards more te reo into works / processes / conversations. What's that like when involving NZSL too?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah. In Aotearoa, we are also working toward more te reo Māori into works / process / conversation. What's that like when involving NZSL too? So I'm not sure if the question is talking about being trilingual and having 3 languages at once, or if it's talking about where we're at in terms of integrating NZSL into more theatre. Millie?
Yep. It's similar. I mean, what you said before, Sian. If we want more te reo involved in theatre, we have to get te reo experts. So I think it's important, if you want sign language involved in theatre or in any arts, then you have to get the deaf experts and the deaf in. Because you can see sometimes people look in the dictionaries or they look at videos and they get like, oh, this is the perfect sign. But there's, it doesn't quite work. It doesn't match the situation. And they need to, they have to check with the deaf people or a sign language tutor, because it just doesn't match what they want. I'm not sure if that answers your question, I'm sorry, but yeah. I mean, I follow what Melissa said, actually, quite honestly. Sometimes it depends on what the concept is and whether that matches the appropriateness of the situation. And sometimes you've got to be creative. And as a Māori deaf woman, being involved in something, it has to be clear in te reo and the concepts and everything. And so that can be quite difficult.
I'll add to that as well. I think the discussion around the difference in process, which is what I'm learning through, my work with Equal Voices and joining their kaupapa, as well as, doing this sort of work, acknowledging that the process is different. NZSL is a beautiful, poetic, visual language. And it's not necessarily necessary to translate from English to NZSL. This example of the show was written in English, and then we had a translation, but then we were able to explore that, and that was a key part of this process. We had a beautiful translation from Melissa, straight from the script that I wrote into NZSL, but what really pushed us into serving what I believe, serving the deaf audiences to come in was, and being authentic, was the collaboration between Melissa and Rachel in that translation. And the process of that was exploring creatively, visually, what experience we can create. So my point in that is to identify that the processes of translating from English to Te Reo Māori to English can be different from NZSL, which is why it's imperative to get first language users. For a visual art form that we have, for an experiential art form of theatre, it's imperative to bring them in, and then you can explore creatively what that language looks like. If you were to bring all three in, and have advisors from all different languages coming together. But again, the key in that is the interchange, is the collaboration. So we have Te Reo Māori speakers, we have NZSL speakers, we have English speakers coming together, and it's the conversation at the core of it. And it's the shifting and turning and collaboration that is what's going to push the piece further. And if that conversation isn't equal, it can be complicated. So I think the key in it is the process.
Absolutely. Sorry, just a sec, Melissa. Yep. Not talking about interpreting at this point. I just want to add, with sign language in theatre, you need to remember, if people are thinking about including sign language, you have to make it accessible. You have to. You can bring an interpreter or a deaf interpreter, but using sign language does not necessarily make it accessible. Because if it's only a little bit dropped in here and there in the show, then that means you're using the language, but it doesn't mean you're making it accessible. So you need to remember that as well.
Cool. Right. Last question. What consideration should we give to the increasing pivoting of work to online performance? So what consideration should we give as there's a pivot towards putting work online or to digitizing performances online? What consideration should we give around that?
I'll just first thought that comes into mind is that going online and going digital can actually provide more access opportunities, and that's something to consider. I know we've recently put a performance on Zoom, and we're actually exploring that kind of idea as a contingency plan for our next Equal Voices project. We actually have some online digital work planned. Yeah, I think we're all kind of getting used to it, aren't we? And trying to look at the creative possibilities out there as we face certain restrictions. It's also kind of exciting to see how we might be able to use some of the technology that we have available to us. That's, I know for so many of us, it doesn't replace being live in a room together, but it's there are some advantages. We ran a workshop, an international workshop led by an amazing deaf performer called Jean St. Clair from the UK, and we were able to have a really effective online workshop in visual language for the deaf community here in Aotearoa, and I was so surprised how well it went. And that was just a creative response to, okay, we're locked down, what can we do? Yeah, and it went really well. So I think it's good to be aware that there are some benefits as well from an access perspective. Does anyone else have anything to add there? I waffled on a bit.
Yeah, just what you've said, Laura. I mean, the digital theatre, the first time we used it just recently, it was really good. It was something to try and work out, but deaf generally prefer face-to-face because, you know, it's 3D. It was a different feeling, and there's a bit of a feeling of not as being connected, but it worked really well and was quite successful with all the people there. And it was quite good practice for us, and we still connected. I liked it. It was really good. So yeah, that was amazing.
Awesome. Just before we close, I've just been sent some really awesome news that Tahi Festival has just received funding from Creative New Zealand and the Wellington City Council to commission a brand new accessible solo work for their festival next year. So for those of you who are asking, how do I do it? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? Here. And the expression of interest for this will be up on the Tahi website in mid-November. So if you're at all interested, I'm sure the team are welcome, you know, they'll take any questions. They're really keen to get involved. If you're a deaf performer, you know, hit them up. This is your chance. Take center stage. So that is awesome news. That just popped up in the chat. So yay.
So good. Can I just add just before we close as well, that I would like to acknowledge. Oh, hold on.
Oh, sorry. I just want to say why hands up. If don't clap, please just do hands up like this. Thanks. Yeah, it's a deaf visual thing. Good on you. Cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a thank you to Tahi Festival as well, because we have obviously our NZSL version of the piece that they chose to commission. Even though it's more expensive, they chose to commission the accessible version of our show. So I just want to acknowledge them and acknowledge them for having us in this space now. And I'd just like to thank this wonderful team of beautiful wahine that I got to work with on this piece. And thank you so much, Natasha, for interpreting the legend. Anybody else want to just close?
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And kisses to everybody. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Right, so that is the end of our live stream. Ladies, we did it. This will be recorded, so if you want to go back, you can watch. And as we said earlier on, if you are interested in getting in touch, hit up the Tahi team for our contact details, or you can see the Equal Voices Arts page, which most of us have bios in. We're more than happy to continue the conversation and support the work being more accessible. So thank you again to Tahi. Thank you to these wonderful ladies who I cannot touch, but pretend that I can. Everyone stay safe. Keep sane. We got this.